Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. Today we're going to be making a fully functioning 1800s medical examination bed. And as always, don't forget to check the link in the description that will take you to the Scavenger Hunt, where you'll find the list of materials and a free printable pattern so you can make this bed along with me. Okay, you ready? Let's go. We're going to start by cutting our pattern piece out first. One tip that I wanted to give you guys that I haven't given in a while is when you have a piece that you have inside parts that you need to cut out, it's a lot easier to cut them out first and then cut the overall piece out. Because a lot of times once you have the initial piece cut out and you go to try to cut out the center pieces, it may not be as strong as it is altogether. There's more of a possibility of tearing it or snagging. And also, I had to remake this pattern 4 different times, and I did not do a final check for the last one. Although it should be accurate, you may have to cut a few things here and there, and I'll mention them throughout the tutorial. And once you have all of your pattern pieces cut out, we're gonna do it all over again, but this time on our final material. For this piece, I did use a mixture of wood and chipboard, and your pieces should be labeled on your pattern either CB for chipboard or W for wood. For the chipboard layers, I did double quite a few of them up, but there are a few that are better off left just a single layer, and the double layers are also marked on your pattern piece by a DL. If you don't have or want to use these materials, you can use whatever materials you are more comfortable with. Once you have all of your pieces cut out, we can move on to assembling them. The first few pieces we're going to work with are the front sides and the ends. We need 2 pieces of each, and they're both chipboard and double layered. To hold everything together, I use painter's tape, but you can also make a jig. The first ones we're going to attach is both end pieces to one of the face pieces. Once you have all 3 pieces glued together, add glue along the seams. For the other face side, we want it to be facing the opposite direction of the other. So if the drawers are on one side, then you want the cabinet on the other side. Now you can close it up and set it aside to dry. One downfall of using the tape method is that there's always the possibility of shifting and your seams not meeting up exactly. But you can always fill those in with a homemade wood filler or just using glue. Now we can glue the sides on top of the bottom, making sure that we've got it centered. I used double layer chipboard for this piece, but it would also work pretty well as wood. Set it aside to dry, and we're going to start building the other rectangle part. For this, you'll need the top sides, both the long and the short. And these pieces would be better off being single layer chipboard. Now that we have all the sides glued together, we can glue the piece labeled bottom of the top. I know, funny names, I'm sorry. This piece is also better off being chipboard and double layered. Once you have it glued all together, set it aside to dry, and we're going to turn our attention to the bottom part of the bed. The next piece that we're gluing in is a divider in between the drawers and the door. And this piece is also double layered chipboard. With the main bottom structure of the bed done now, we're going to move on to making the doors and drawers. Starting with the doors first, we're going to add the trim on top of the door base, both being single layer chipboard, and I did use double-sided tape for this. Once you have your trim attached, set them aside and we're going to start working on the top part of the bed again. We need to add the divider part to the inside of the bed. To make sure you're gluing it in the right place, you can use the piece labeled top under bed. This separates the area between the storage underneath and the area for the prop for the back of the chair. Then glue the top under bed on top. Once you have the pieces all together, set that aside and we're going to move on to making the drawers. For the drawer sides, I couldn't get all the information on them, and they are very easy to get mistaken in which direction they go. Putting a tiny dot or even the arrow on each one will help you keep that right while you're putting them together. And I also forgot, these are all single layer chipboard. I used double layer chipboard on the second one I made, and quite honestly, it was too much, so single layer is just perfect. For now, we're not going to be adding the drawer faces, just the behind drawer faces pieces. For the back side of the drawers, you can use the area that we cut out from the face piece pattern. We already have it cut out and it saves on material, and it's the exact size that we need. While we're waiting for the drawers to dry, we're going to move back to the doors. And just like we did with the drawers, we're going to use the piece from the face to make the back side of our door. But first we have to use it to get some measurements. Turning your door over to the back side, take the piece from the face and lay it over top and trace around the edge. We want it flush against one of the long sides and then have gaps on the 3 other sides. Once you have your lines drawn, go ahead and glue your piece in place, making sure that you're flush with the one side and you line up with your pencil lines. Now we're going to keep going by adding the shelves. There are 3 per cupboard door, 1 at the very top, 1 in the middle, and then 1 at the very bottom. Repeat the process for both doors. The one cool thing about these doors is that there's no hinges, and I really like that. Okay, now that we've pretty much got everything built, we're going to move on to making the drawer handles. For the handles, you'll need some flathead jewelry pins, a few tiny seed beads, and a flat round bead. For the first bed that I made, I didn't put any beads on it at all and just used the flathead jewelry pin. But for the second one, I decided to fancy it up just a little bit, so I added the beads. Next, we need to poke holes in the center of all the drawer faces. Then poke the handles through the holes. I used double-sided tape for this, but glue would work perfectly fine. Trim a bit of the end away. We want to keep some of it this time. Usually I hold them in place with resin, but this time we're going to fold over the end and lay it flat against the back of the drawer face. Then attach them to the drawers. Repeat the process for all of them. Now that the drawers are done, we're going to finish up the top part of the bed. We need a small bit of a gap that's not accounted for on this piece, so we're going to add a little bit of a wood trim to the long sides. These pieces need to be sticking up about halfway, and that's so they leave us a gap when we attach the other part of the bed. While we're waiting for that part of the bed to dry, we're going to move on to our attachment pieces. For this, I used fabric that I coated in glue and let completely dry. This stiffens it up and makes sure that it won't come unraveled. This piece needs to be about 1.5 inches long and about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch wide. And while we've got our fabric in our hand, we'll need to cut another piece that's about 1 inch wide. We'll be using this piece first. The next few pieces we're going to be working with are the wood ones, starting with the bed leg part first. I used double-sided tape to hold down my fabric, but you can use glue. Stick half of the piece of fabric to the back side of the leg piece. Then attach the fabric to the inside open part of the bed piece. Don't worry about that little wood strip, you guys don't have it. I removed this piece of the pattern because it isn't necessary. Somewhere in the past footage, I missed putting on the footrest on the bottom of the leg piece. So once you get your piece glued on, attach the thin strip of wood labeled footrest at the other end of the leg part. Okay, now we're ready to attach the back and the seat rest of the bed together. Lay all 3 of your pieces as straight as you can, then lay your fabric over top of the center, covering both the gaps. Next, add glue to the middle part and attach it to the rest of the bed frame. The fabric strip needs to be on the top part. Hold it in place with clamps until it's dry. If you wanted to, now would be a good time to paint both this piece and the bottom piece because we're going to be putting on the cushions next. I waited until later on and I really think I should have done it at this point. Because once the cushions are on, it's hard to get in between the cracks without getting paint on the things that's not supposed to have paint on it. While we're waiting for all that to dry, we can start making the cushions. For this, we'll need a few sheets of thin craft foam and our 3 pieces of chipboard that are labeled matte. The 2 big ones are the inside line of the seat and backrest. Trace the seat and backrest pattern onto your craft foam. I made mine 3 layers thick for the big pieces, and for the center bed portion I just made it 2, so that gave it more room for the end pieces to fold up. To attach all my layers together, I used double-sided tape, and the chipboard should be the bottommost layer. To cover the cushions and make it look like leather, we're going to be using brown paper. This could be a brown paper bag or packaging paper. I trimmed my corners shorter and started by folding those in first. I would recommend not doing it this way. Trimming the corners is okay, but starting with the corners for the fold didn't work out so well and it made creases in odd places. I would suggest just wrapping it like a present. Repeat the process for all 3 cushions. Once you have all your cushions wrapped, we're going to glue them to our bed, starting with the center piece first. To make sure that we have enough clearance for both sides to fold up, fold the wood pieces up, then set the cushion up against the middle cushion. Then press it up against the wood. Repeat the same process for the other side. Next, you'll need some sturdy wire and pliers. For this, I'm using floral wire. We're going to be making the prop that holds up the back portion of the chair. About 1/4 of an inch away from the end of your wire, make a right angle. Then, using the bed as a guide, hold the chair in its most upright position and figure out where you need to put the next bend in your wire. Then make another right angle point going the opposite direction of the first one. Next, leaving about an inch wide gap, make another right angle bending the wire back up in the same direction. Then directly across from the first right angle, make another one. Then 1/4 of an inch away from that bend, trim off the excess. To hold our wire piece in place, we need 2 small chipboard pieces. These can be about 1/2 inch wide and about 1 inch long. And while we have this in our hands, we also need a piece that's about 1 inch wide and 1.5 inches long. Set the 2 smaller pieces aside, we'll work with them in a few minutes. Right now we're going to focus on the bigger piece. Using your chipboard as a guide, measure and cut 5 small pieces of a skewer. Next, glue one of the little pieces of skewer right in the center of our chipboard piece. Then glue 2 more pieces at either end. Then glue the 2 remaining pieces of chipboard in the middle of the ones you've already glued down. Then lift the back portion of the chair and glue this in place. We want it to be up against the end but centered. Next, glue the little pieces of chipboard to the ends of our wire. Then add glue to the chipboard tabs and glue it in place. Once I had it glued in place, I used my fingernails to push up against the wire so it gave it a nice crease on both sides. Now that we have both pieces done, we can glue them together and make sure everything's working. To give the cushions the leather look, mix up paint and clear Elmer's glue. You'll want 2 parts glue to 1 part paint. Once everything has had a chance to completely dry, we can add the wheels. For this you'll need 4 round metal beads and 4 bead caps. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope this gives you ideas for your next project, or you join along in building the bed with me. If you're new, welcome, I'm glad you're here. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, as that all really helps me out a lot. Our next project will be a medical crash cart that lights up. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.